Okay, we're live. Hey guys.
Hey everybody. So we have some expertise coming to you today in terms of, let me get straight on the camera here, in terms of how to balance your audio. We're going to talk about a plugin that we made through IK Multimedia that encapsulates the philosophies and concepts of what we use in our daily life. So when I was trained into this business, and I worked with Doug Sachs, coming straight out of Berklee College of Music. One of the things that he taught me was how to line up a tape machine. Back in those days, everything was analog tape, and I didn't realize it at the time. And it occurred to me in later years, and this is what we built into our plugin, that it's not a matter of getting some music, EQing it, printing it, getting it out of there. It's a matter of learning how to play it back properly. And once you can do that, you have to do very little work to it. And so the ultimate goal in the process of what we do for a living is to really do as little as possible to the audio. So when you capture audio, you're capturing moving air molecules. You're putting a microphone up to a singer or a guitar player, unless it's electronic music. You really want to capture that as pure as possible. Under most circumstances, this is the deal, you know. So once you start capturing all this stuff and you store it on a piece of tape with, you magnetize particles to mimic what used to be moving air particles, you start to realize the importance of the purity of keeping these signals as pure and clean as possible. So to cut a long story short, when you just apply it to mastering, lining up a tape machine, we used to have the option of different types of playheads, different types of electronics, tube, solid state, different types of capacitors within those electronics. So we would spend hours listening to a tape, getting a feel for the music, getting a feel for everything about it, and deciding, okay, maybe we need solid state playback for this album, or maybe even this song, and then the next song would be a tube playback. So it would really take a long time to figure out how to properly play back a tape. And once we figured out that curve, we would then figure out that it needed a little bit of top end, or maybe a little bit of compression, or we'd make musical choices to decide what to do. What I found later in my years is that this art of figuring out how to play something back in our industry got lost a little bit. And the gear manufacturers were releasing plugins all day long, getting less and less expensive, and easier for people to do their own music, particularly in the operating systems that came out in computers. It's nothing to do the stuff yourself these days. And what was happening was people were overdoing it and overdoing it and overdoing it. And I was going out to AES conventions. I was going out everywhere and doing, public speaking and taking a lot of questions. And one of the recurring questions that would come in was, how do I know what to do? How do I know when is enough? And that to me is a sure sign of not being ready to do it. So understanding the process of getting it to a place to where it can be processed, and then what the processing should be, became more and more mysterious and more overdone and overcooked, and levels got higher, everything got jammed. And as a result, we started to see everything started sounding very digital and hashy and edgy and full of level, unexciting ultimately, and fatiguing on the brain. So so we called up IK Multimedia. We decided to do something about this. It's easy to critique this in our position and complain about it like what often happens behind the scenes in the music business. But it also is important that we empower the people that are using this equipment to make good decisions. And so what we try to do is build some of this understanding that we have into the product that we made here. And I believe it's the first and only of its kind that has something like that. So when you get a particular genre of music, electronica, Americana, film score, anything like that, any genre really, there's usually a starting point of what we decide to do in terms of playing that back. So in our case, we have, these days, we're an all analog console. You can see behind us our actual console. This is the console in, maybe twist the chair. This is the console that's in the plugin. If any of you guys have used the plugin, this is the actual console. And I lost my thought there as I said that. What was I saying, Rubes?
I think you're probably going to talk about how we modeled
Yes.
this plugin after our console.
Yeah. So I was going to talk about how we decide to play something back. In our case, we have multiple D to A choices. We have gain structures. There's a lot of choices to make on the music before we even get to the point of processing it. And these days, sometimes you can even touch a plugin onto the source playback. The way that we play back, the way that we work in music is we'll take a file. Most days it's files these days. Every once in a while it's still an analog tape. But we'll play that back through Pro Tools into a D to A converter, through a line amplifier, bringing it up to level, into our console, in which we have all kinds of solid state and tube analog equipment, and then we re-record it digitally. We use benchmark A to D converters, and back to a different computer to store that file, and then we have it all set up at Unity Gain, so we can A/B our files with the mixes and maybe other albums if we need to do that. So in order to figure out the style of music you have and how to play that back, maybe Rubes, you can show them in the plugin. I call him Rubes. This is Reuben Cohen, also recently re-nicknamed Ruko. We're working with Steven Tyler in this room, and because his name is Reuben Cohen, Steven decided to start calling him Ruko. So we kind of figured when the lead singer of Aerosmith picks a nickname for you, you got to go with it. So Ruko, which means old man in Spanish, by the way.
Getting there.
I'm the old man.
So